In today's video, we're going to answer some of life's age-old questions like, does choosing Wario in Mario Kart mean you have an affinity for garlic? And do toads really have more fun?
I'm Mac Fraser.
I'm Backrolls, and we're the Nintendo Nerds, here to help you craft and play your way to a better day.
We met in the not-too-distant past during some spirited online Mario Kart, and as it turns out, we share a love for art, gaming, and all things Nintendo.
And we want to share our nerdy knowledge with you.
So stick around, because in today's video, we're here with our very special guest, Chloe Condon of Microsoft. Thank you so much for being with us, Chloe.
Of course.
Thanks, Chloe. We really appreciate your time. So you've created a really clever piece of technology that uses facial recognition software and emotional data in order to determine your Mario Kart astrological chart. But before we dig into that, because we know each other from real life, I know that your origin story is really unlike about 99% of the engineers out there. I mean, you and I actually met doing musical theater together, so I was wondering if you could talk about your transition into engineering. Did you have an aha moment, or was there a series of life changes that led you to your career pivot?
So that's a great question. I did theater a majority of my life. I grew up in the theater. Both of my parents come from the theater. My mom was a costume designer, graphic designer, and my dad is a retired director playwright who's still pretty creative, still writes some stuff. And, theater was in my blood. I was born in a trunk. I've been doing this. I've been theater camp, and I went to a performing arts high school. I really had my blinders on for theater. I was like, this is what I want to do. I didn't really have my sights set for Broadway per se, but I really wanted to travel around in a touring production of Les Mis. That was the dream for me for a very long time. I graduated from college and booked my very, very first big, starring role in Xanadu. With a fun little side note, my co-star was Sugar Cane from the recent season of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Oh wow, small world.
Yeah, we know where that picture is. We will definitely put that picture up on screen.
Oh yes, it's very rainbow. It is worth sharing to everyone. So I did that show and I thought, wow, I've really made it. This is it. This is the big time, because there was a cardboard cutout of me in the lobby, and I was in the paper a bunch and all this different stuff. I felt like, this is my first show outside of college. This is when my life begins. And they paid me $400 for 4 months of my work. So I quickly realized pretty early on in my career as an actress that I needed a day job to support me, because not everyone is as lucky as, being discovered in a mall or, immediately getting their equity card or booking a television show or something. So I worked for many, many years in tech, but not as an engineer. So I was a, recruiter for a while. I was an admin. I was an executive assistant. I pretty much did everything but engineering. I did not really know what engineers did at all. And it wasn't until really, actually, this is worth mentioning, because I was supposed to go to a Beach Blanket Babylon callback.
Which is worth,
if you're
unfamiliar, that is my day job.
Yes.
Well, my evening job, actually.
And I ended up, the callback got canceled or something, and I ended up going on this date with my now boyfriend of 4 years, who's a software engineer, and got to know a little bit more about the industry and what software engineering is from him. At the time, he was working at Twitter, and I did not use Twitter. I thought Twitter was stupid. I'm now on Twitter so much that my boyfriend hates it. So he truly created a monster. I always joke around it that us meeting was a very My Fair Lady, Henry Higgins, Eliza Doolittle situation, because he saw a lot of creativity in me and saw that I was getting kind of burned out on the theater thing. And he asked me, what parts of theater do you like? And I was like, well, I really like the wigs and the costumes. And I really like to sing. And he kind of helped me identify cosplay is really similar to that and doesn't require as many rehearsals and things like that. So I was already kind of I'd been doing theater for so long. I thought, what if I put all of the time and energy I put towards theater towards literally anything else? And I considered, doing yoga more. And I had all these ideas of what I wanted to do. And I, by chance, saw this talk at Google that was all about getting little girls interested in computer science by adding characters to Disney Channel and Nickelodeon shows to just show hey, this is what an engineer can look like. And, I got very inspired from that talk, and I immediately went home and Googled all these companies that they mentioned, like Girls Who Code, like all these sort of things that were in place to teach young women how to code.
Yeah, the
And they were
representation is
also-
important as well.
Absolutely. And I, I looked at all these and I thought, oh, these are for little girls. My ship has sailed. If only this had been around when I was, that age. And my boyfriend said, you can still learn, right? Like there's all these different resources online, and did a little bit of programming on my own. And of course, because, Google is Google and Facebook is Facebook, I started getting targeted ads for boot camps, which are pretty popular in the Bay Area and are starting to pop up all over the world and all over the US. And they're pretty much like 12-week long software engineering boot camps for people who don't have a computer science degree, maybe don't have the funds to get a 4-year degree, but they want to do a career change. And a lot of people who go to these are like myself. They've had a whole previous life beforehand. I was very skeptical. I was like, are these pyramid schemes? I don't know. And did research and, studied, and the entrance interviews to these were pretty intense. And ended up doing a boot camp and doing this career change. And nowadays, many years later and multiple jobs later, I now work at Microsoft, and I get to hack and work on really cool products and demos and examples. And this Mario one was one of my favorite ones because it was just so like quirky and unique and used so many different pieces of my brain and of technology.
So Chloe, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your bootcamp with the Hackbright Academy. Is it something that you'd recommend to other people? Were there any takeaways that you have from it that really stuck with you? Any troubles? Did you struggle with it at all? Did you at any point think, maybe this isn't for me, maybe I shouldn't do this?
Oh my goodness. So imposter syndrome was not a term that I had heard before I entered tech, but I definitely was a victim of imposter syndrome, and I am till this day, to be perfectly honest.
Hey.
And if you're unfamiliar with that, it's basically like this concept of feeling like you have no idea what you're doing and people are going to figure out you're a fake.
And that's basically adult life for any of you listening in who say, that sounds a little bit like me.
It's funny because in our early 20s, we feel like we're invincible, we can do anything, and at 30, we're still wondering, what's next?
Yeah, I think it used to drive me crazy when I was attending my boot camp, because all these like software engineers who already had jobs would say, oh, that never goes away, don't worry. And I was like, that's easy for you to say, you have a job. And now that I'm here, I'm like, oh, yeah. But yeah, no, I would highly recommend boot camps. My kind of pieces of advice there are definitely do your research, because not all boot camps are created equally. I find that the ones that are public with their numbers and their outcomes, that's a very positive sign. I ended up attending Hackbright, which was an all-female boot camp here in San Francisco, and I have nothing but wonderful things to say about them, because truly that program changed my life. I would not be where I am today without it. There's also some really wonderful programs here in the Bay. Holberton is one that's really amazing. Hack Reactor, App Academy, there's so many out there. And yeah, I mean, I think there's such a wonderful option for people who, sizes and shapes of boot camps. Some of them, they can be pretty expensive. Some of them defer tuition and take a percentage of your first paycheck to help pay it off. There's a lot of financial aid services available for it. Most of these institutions are private though, so you will get like a certificate or something like that, but it's pretty recognized in the industry, I think now even more so than when I was attending. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing I struggled with, honestly, was learning. Boot camps really teach you to learn how to learn. They teach you how to learn a language. So my boot camp was a Python and JavaScript boot camp, but I don't necessarily use Python and JavaScript all the time. But Hackbright taught me how to approach a language and how to like work with an API and different tools and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I know so many amazing folks who've come from backgrounds, like I know former opera singers, other former actresses, former botanists, former elementary school principals who've gone and done these boot camps. So I actually just had a meeting yesterday with someone. We're building a wine, like sommelier bot. He comes from the wine industry. And I met with a playwright today who's still doing playwriting stuff. So they're such a great option, boot camps, for people who have degrees already or don't have degrees, but have that like industry / they've had a whole life beforehand. A lot of moms do it. There's so many different flavors of people who go through there.
Yeah, that was actually my thought, that you were describing people from all walks of life who have decided that it's time for a second act. And that's one thing that I love about your journey, is that you decided that it's never too late to decide that it's time for something different. So I do think this career pivot led you to such an exciting career at Microsoft that I want you to tell us a little more about it. What's a day like for a developer advocate?
Oh, wow. Well, it depends on the day, I guess. So a lot of my job is working with other people in the community, which is really cool. I never really liked the term networking. I think that's such a yucky word. I think of it more like friend making, because I think that especially when we're making content, be that a blog post or a video or whatever that looks like, partnering with someone else and getting it out to a bigger network is way better than just having an echo chamber of your own, blog or your company's blog, or even, your Twitter account for that matter.
Absolutely.
So a lot of my job is meeting with other people, figuring out ways that we can work together. I make a lot of content, so that comes in blog post form, video form. I do a lot of podcasts. I do a lot of public speaking, which is really fun because people always ask me, do you think you'll ever perform again? And I really do kind of get my kicks performing because I get to perform.
Yeah. Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to build connections with a whole room there, and you have to have that sort of charisma to draw the people in and make them want to listen to what it is you have to say.
Absolutely. And I have found I'm pretty unique in this industry because I come from this performing arts background. So my talks are very, very different than most technical talks. I, first of all, have a lot of dad jokes and a lot of gifs and puns. And, I keep it pretty lighthearted because I truly believe, and I give keynotes on this, that humor and entertainment and empathy are so, so important when talking to developers. I think we tend to get really serious when we talk about technology, which I think there's a time and a place for, absolutely. But, there's memory hooks. We've all gone to children's theater and we've all, attended shows where we kind of doze off, and it's important to keep people hooked and interested. So a day in the life really depends on where I am and what I'm doing. But today, for example, I had a meeting this morning with someone on working on my fake boyfriend app and front end and back end for that. And then I met with this playwright for lunch, and we talked about a chatbot that we could build for that for Ray of Light Theater. And then, everything from coordinating events that are going to happen in our event space to giving a talk at a meetup to sometimes I'm traveling the world. So it really depends on the day. Sometimes I'm super, super heads down and just like working on code and doing content. Other days I'm out and about and, shaking hands, making friends. So yeah,
shaking hands,
it's different
and
every day.
babies.
Exactly. It's a lot of twittering. It's a lot of engaging with developers where they are, which to me is like out in the trenches, at events, at these different kind of things, and online too.
Yeah, if you're not in the Bay Area, think about coming to the Maker Faire sometime.
Yes, yeah.
Chloe, I wanted to say one of the things that I've kind of noticed through you talking a little bit here is that your excitement is palpable. Like you were talking about taking your skills and applying them in other places, and you were kind of worried and what's left for what's coming for me after my time in the theater. And you had mentioned that you were taking all of your efforts and putting them into something, and it really sounds like you've done that. I think that a lot of people, when they are looking to make life changes, especially after having built a life already, they're kind of a little bit worried about that. They might go 15, 20%. They're going to put their toes in the water a little bit first, but it sounds like you really went head first into this, and like I said, your excitement is palpable. I think that it's really cool that you have found a different outlet to be really creative. So we've talked a little bit about your time as a developer advocate. We've talked about Microsoft, a day in the life, but now it's time for some real questions. What does it say about me that I'm only use Mario and Mario Kart? And also,
Wow.
let's chat about the Mario Kart horoscope that you created, and how did this idea come to be?
Yeah, so it's so funny. This actually started on Twitter, which I'm very active on. And I honestly think I was just playing Mario Kart with my boyfriend one night, and I tweeted a tweet which said, in my opinion, your chosen Mario Kart player says way more than your zodiac sign does. If they choose Toad, you're like, okay, you're an introvert. And if they choose Bowser, you're like, okay, who hurt you? And it went pretty viral. people started like commenting and saying like, okay, I'm Peach, what does that say about me? I'm Toad, what does it mean if I'm Waluigi? And I, as a joke, was just replying with my own horoscope that I was making up on the fly, and people seemed to find humor in that. And then someone on Twitter made this amazing, well, first he started a spreadsheet. His name's Steven, and that basically was tracking all of my responses. So for example, someone said, what does pink gold peach say about me? And I said, you have excellent taste and you don't put up with other people's crap. Someone said, what does Yoshi say about me as a person? I said, you're eager to please. Or green shy guy, I said, you're green and very shy. And so Steven was great, and just like for fun put together this Google sheet, and then he created this GitHub page, which is really cool. And if you're unfamiliar with GitHub pages, it's basically like this free thing. You can just like host a very simple front end kind of application thing on GitHub. And since we didn't have anything on the back end that we were tracking for this, it was just like text essentially. He put this together and just tweeted it at me, and it's amazing. I'll definitely share the link to the blog post so you can take a look at all of it. But he used this library called Nes.css. So Super Nintendo CSS, which if you're unfamiliar with CSS, basically it helps make websites pretty. It works with HTML. And it's amazing. I mean, if you take a look at it, it's all in the, Nintendo font. It uses a bunch of little text bubbles that look very similar, almost to like a, Pokemon game or something. And it's just all around very, very cute. And he just filled it in with little, dialogue boxes that said baby Luigi, some example text, baby Peach, some example text for every single character. So he basically did a bulk of the work, the front end work for me, which is amazing.
He made it look beautiful. It looked super charming and cute.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
And then I kind of started playing around with the Microsoft Face API, which is basically this API we have that can detect all sorts of things from images of faces. So, if we uploaded a picture of me and Brendan from when we did How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, it'd probably be like excited, confused, wearing glasses. So there's all these different characteristics it can throw back at you. Let's see, for example, it can do your age, like your head pose, your smile, what your emotions are, what your, like if your hair is long or short, if you're wearing makeup, if you have facial hair, accessories, all kinds of stuff. And what this is usually used for is to detect emotion, identify different things in photos. If you've ever used an application before that you've photos and you put dogs or something and it shows you all the dogs, it's probably using some sort of like machine learning like that. This is basically the same, but specifically for faces. So I played with it just on my own. I did a couple tutorials through our Microsoft Learn portal, which I'll definitely give you all links for. And I thought, okay, what if I just uploaded images of Mario Kart characters? Like, what would it return? Like, if I did a Yoshi, would it, or like a Luigi, would it be like super scared and like tall? I don't know. I had no idea what it was going to return. And then I quickly realized, oh, okay, so this only works on human faces. So I can't do cartoon images, but I can do cosplay images. So I was able to find pretty much most of the Mario Kart people, with the exception of, gosh, which was the one I couldn't find? Like Lemmy Koopa, I definitely found, but Iggy or Ludwig, like absolutely not.
Well, you're going pretty. Sorry, you're going pretty far down the rabbit hole when you're looking for all the Koopalings. I feel like, even with cosplay.
It was a very ambitious. Honestly, it's taken me a while to get all of them up there, because part of the, I would say the most time-consuming part was finding clear enough cosplay images that I thought accurately represented characters. Because sometimes you would see a Bowser and it'd be smiling, and you're like, I can't do that.
That's not Bowser. Yeah.
No.
And I wanted it to be pretty accurate to the character. So in my blog post, I have just sort of an example of, I found a Lemmy Koopa image, and it's this guy, and he's making kind of like a sticking tongue out face kind of thing. And then the emotions that came back were pretty accurate for what I would think Lemmy Koopa would be. It would, it's like 0.27 neutral, 0.001 contempt, 0.729 happiness, and then it guessed it's always funny when it guesses the age too for the baby Mario and baby Luigi. It's like 5. So basically what I did is I took all of that data that I would get back from each image, and then I wrote up a little horoscope and I put it on this little website. And it was a really cool way to kind of demonstrate like what's possible with the API, but put it in a really, really fun like way that isn't so. Times when we're using deep learning technology like this, the tendency is to think of all the very serious business use cases, which are very important. But also there's just such cool stuff that can be built with this that's a little bit more on the fun side like this. So it was really fun to put together.
Well, and I think encouraging people to think less serious all the time is how people will sometimes come up with better ideas that are a little more serious. Like, it pays to think outside of the box sometimes.
I mean, I have so many friends who want to partner on like RuPaul's Drag Race chatbots and, you know, all sorts of different technical content, like games of like guessing the entrance phrases of RuPaul's Drag Race contestants. Like, there's just so many fun, like if you look at my backlog of content that I want to work on, just giving it a glance right now, it's like IoT Beauty and the Beast Rose, you know, like things of a Beyonce selfie camera with a fan. Like, these are the kind of things that go through my brain. And I truly do think that is because I come from this creative arts background. But it's so fun to kind of like push boundaries and like kind of go where no engineer has gone before, which usually for me is just like toy and breaking apart quirky fun things.
So you mentioned in your Medium article that in order to see the stats for what would be your Me Racer, you should try running an image of yourself through the code. So as someone who only races with my Me Racer, I am very invested in obtaining this information. It sounds like we're going to have to collaborate on a future project on that.
Please, I would love to.
So, Chloe, we were kind of talking about the facial recognition, like the algorithm that you were using the API to have a look and pull these values from pictures, and that the first major hurdle that you hit was the fact that it wasn't going to give you any data based on animated characters or pictures or like video of animated characters. How long did it take you to think, I should look at cosplayers? And was this something that you were backed up with for a little bit, or was it just a quick blip and you immediately had the idea?
Oh, that's a great question. I actually think the way I came up with this idea is our office manager here at the Microsoft San Francisco office recently shown me some Daisy cosplay that she did. Her name is Amber. She's amazing. I'm pretty sure she's going to do an episode with y'all, so look out for
exactly.
that. But she had sewn, I don't know how we ended up getting on this topic, but she and I was going to RuPaul's DragCon, and I made this really fun Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors, plant thing out of an old Tickle Me Elmo, which was really fun. And I was showing her that, and we added each other on Instagram, and I saw these amazing photos of her dressed as Daisy, and I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And she's like, yeah, I made that dress. And I was like, oh my God, it blew my mind. And then when I ran into this hurdle, I'm pretty sure when I was working on this, I was in Paris. So I was super jet lagged and just like trying to work with this content. And then I thought, oh, why don't I just try her image? And then I tried hers and it worked. And I was like, oh, cool, sweet. I guess this is how I'm doing it now.
Perfect.
Just,
and
like,
so if people want to take
So
if people want to take the test and find out more about their Mario Kart personality types, we'll have a link in the description below. And it's crazy that this all started on Twitter, and that I believe Steven got a spreadsheet going. It's amazing what some people will put their time into, and they're like, this seems like a really cool thing, and I'm gonna get some data together for this.
I'm gonna butcher the quote, but there's this episode of Family Guy. I promise this is going somewhere. There's this episode of Family Guy where Peter and a couple other people decide they're gonna make their own animated show called like something about ducks. I don't remember what it is, but and there's a whole theme song and everything, but Peter says, let's spend entirely too much time on this, or something to that effect. Like, let's put all of our time into this even though we shouldn't. And that's how I feel so much about like these little side project things that I just get so emotionally invested in. Like, I'm like, let's spend entirely too much time on this.
Well, you mentioned before, like, that's kind of the good side of Twitter, but I know from our past conversations, you're also no stranger to Twitter being all different shades of good and bad. So I kind of wanted to touch on that just a little bit. You've had some encounters with some weird people, but there was a really bizarre incident in January where some guy photoshopped a sort of famous picture of you into an Instagram post and then lied about you stalking him throughout a conference. I'd just like for you to touch a little bit on that really strange event, but also it seems like you had such a wonderful tech community that rallied behind you when that happened, which is what I'd like to really touch on.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a wonderful example of the internet doing something positive because, as you mentioned, I'm a woman on. When I usually my DMs and my tweets are filled with some interesting messages, but for the most part, I love Twitter. I mean, I'm on Twitter all the time. I've met many of my real life friends on Twitter through the tech community specifically. Some of my best friends. And so it's a really a love-hate relationship for me because for every, negative thing that happens, there's like 200 positive things that happen. I refuse to close my DMs because I get a lot of really great inbound, messages and opportunities in there. So I'm very brave to keep my DMs open, as people say, but it's important to me. But yeah, this story is really interesting, and I won't get too deep in the weeds because it is a deep rabbit hole.
You can read all about it on Medium.
Yes.
Yep.
There is a lot of different recap blog posts about it on Mashable and Medium, and if you just search, Chloe Condon, maybe, or T Medlin, it might pop up. But the long story short is someone discovered an image of me on Instagram, and it was all very happenstance. Like, it was a 1 in a million chance that this person saw this image and then sent it to me. But the caption on it claimed that I was, oh, this girl's crazy. She's been stalking me. If I go missing, this is who you should call, kind of thing. And I was like, what the? Now, what had happened there is that photo was a photo that had gone pretty viral a couple years before from the article that I wrote called What It's Like to Be a Woman at a Tech Conference. And long story short, the internet kind of went to town in that, a lot of people who follow me work in tech. And they were able to determine pretty quickly that a majority of this person's images on their social media accounts, so I'm talking like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, were all photoshopped or fake or were very misleading and claiming ownership of other people's content and, claiming relationships with people that they didn't have. And, I got all these very interesting, if you follow the thread, open a bottle of wine, it'll take you a couple hours to get through all of the different tangents that happen. But yeah, it was one of those things where like I found myself in the middle of this insane Twitter storm. Seth Rogen gets involved at one point. It's quite a journey that I highly recommend checking out in article form.
Article form is much better than real life emotional form, I'm sure.
Yes. I mean, in the moment, of course, I was glued to my phone for 48 hours refreshing my Twitter feed. It was really, really cool to see all the different stuff that people came up with and really like shed some light on, wow, you can be on the internet and pretend to be a completely different person.
Truly.
What an insane situation to find yourself in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It literally like got into an Uber, saw that Twitter, and like the next week of my life was insane. But I would say, what I learned the most from that is, as far as harassment on the internet, like all of the different, there are no laws for this. Like you cannot get a restraining order for someone who lives in a different state. If you go to the police about a situation like this, they will look at you like you are crazy. So it really made me passionate about putting information out there for people who may experience similar situations online. There's an article that I wrote for Mashable called What It's Like to Be a Woman on the Internet, which kind of focuses specifically on that and what that experience was like. But yeah, gosh, it's quite a rabbit hole. Highly recommend reading the summary, but the internet did some good for once.
Not to be like, gotcha journalism, but I really did want to talk about what I really appreciated about that was that there were so many people that were like, I know Chloe, and this is wrong. Like, she would not be the kind of person who would track someone down at a conference, so something is wrong here. So they immediately notified you about it, and they immediately started to pick apart what his whole web of lies, too.
I should mention the positive takeaway from this is that because of the virality and popularity of the tweet, because people were just fascinated with what was going on, like people kept finding more and more and more stuff, is I was able to raise, I think, about 2,000, maybe a little bit more than that, $2,000+ for Girls Who Code, because we sold t-shirts of the image of like the little thumbs up image of me in the pocket. So that was at least a really positive takeaway for all the kind of frustrating meetings and HR calls and police reports and all of the crazy things that goes into a situation like that. At least we did get to raise money for an amazing cause.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it really goes to show that it doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, that you can be the victim of some sort of like abuse through the internet. Like we talk a lot, just not to go too dark here, but there's been a lot in the news over the last couple of years about children being bullied, teenagers being bullied over Twitter, being bullied over Facebook, and no one really knowing what's going on. And so it's really good that you had a community of people around you to help support you through all of this, and the fact that you were able to raise some money for something that's important to you, that's amazing too.
It was quite a journey, and every once in a while I'll get a bunch of new followers on Instagram or Twitter, and they're all like of a certain age, like millennial, like younger than me, and then I'll get some sort of like alert that says, blah 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 YouTube channel did a report on the Chloe Condon, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's like coming back into the news again. Because it is fascinating. Like you kind of forget how many twists and turns to that story there were at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So back a little bit to your life at Microsoft there. So great tech community is definitely important and plays a large part to inform you on what would be best to build next using Microsoft technology. Can you tell us what inspires you in the workplace? Maybe something that you want to work on in the near future, and like who are some of your icons, both in technology and in entertainment?
Yeah, I would say icons for sure would be it's a smattering. So everyone from Bill Nye the Science Guy
Yes.
to Pee Wee Herman to all these people who did really cool science makery things that were very non-traditional, like Miss Frizzle from Magic School Bus. Things of kind of that world.
Miss Frizzle is a terrific icon for life.
My God, yes.
Oh yeah, I mean, she is a queen as far as I'm concerned. I'm really a fan of people who are making, not just technology more accessible, but like for audiences that are non-traditional. So my very, very good friend, April, she is at Vogue and Code on Twitter. She's amazing. She does a lot of content that she did a Git tutorial that I think was Mean Girls themed. My friend Jennifer Wadella does a really amazing talk that is Gossip Girl themed. That's about a very deep technology. There's some folks out there who, really embrace who they are in tech. Pink Rocket Ship on Twitter. She's like a space, science STEM gal who wears a lot of pink. So I really love to celebrate people who really they don't even necessarily have to have a non-traditional background, but they're just truly bring themselves to this industry. But yeah, as far as things that I'm working on, I'm doing a bunch of chatbot stuff right now, which is really exciting. That originally started from all the not so fun DMs that I get. I'm sure we've all gotten just a hey in our inbox before. So I kind of started playing with chatbots for that, and then I've kind of developed this series around building different bots to help memorize lines and choose wine and help with RuPaul's Drag Race trivia. There's so many things you can do with that. I'm also working on a souped up version of my fake boyfriend app, which will be really fun, coming out soon. And I'm just really excited to play more with new technologies. So IoT specifically, I've got my feet wet there, but to really dive deeper on that. And I later this year will be playing more with mixed reality stuff, which I'm very excited for, because I think that in the performing arts specifically, mixed reality and augmented reality are going to change the industry completely, and I'm so excited to get my hands wet with that, or dirty, I guess I should say.
Well, I know in addition to all of your technology work, you're also big into crafting, so we're definitely going to have to get together soon to build some Nintendo-themed stuff. But I just
Crafternoon!
A crafternoon, absolutely. But I just want to discuss, with a very demanding job at Microsoft, how do you carve out time for yourself to do those sort of things? I know you make these amazing troll dolls with succulent heads, and that is something that takes a little bit of time. What works for you? Do you have to put that into your schedule weeks in advance, or do you just kind of grab time wherever you can find it?
Ah, that's a great question. I, with the last year or so, have had to learn to say no, because I've always been a yes and person my entire life, coming from theater, where, every opportunity you get is like so, so, so important, and, exposure is everything. But in the last year or so, I've kind of like pulled back, and I make sure that I have nights at home, at least like at minimum 2 nights a week. But, more than that is always great. And crafting is really what gets me out of my head. I think like even when I'm watching a TV show with my boyfriend, I'll be like coloring in my RuPaul's Drag Race coloring book, because it really kind of helps me come down from the day. So I don't schedule it. I should, honestly, because I wish I did it more. But it's really kind of my therapy and yoga in a strange way, in addition to yoga and therapy, I should say. But yeah, I think just, little things like making a perler bead Mario, piece of art for my home, or making little rings out of tiny food, or putting succulents inside of trolls. I just think doing something physical really gets me out of my head. People always say if you ever get stuck on a coding problem to go take a walk. And that's sort of my version of taking the walk, because I live in the Mission and it's very dangerous at night. So yeah, I think, I've really, as of late, like within the last 5 or 6 months, have tried to make it a priority in my life to touch something creative, take apart a toy, do something that's going to be, anything that's going to get me off of my computer for a little bit and in a good headspace. I usually listen to a podcast or some music, or
Away from a
catch
screen
up on.
is great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's honestly what keeps me grounded. And it's fun now to combine the two. Like, I would say usually if I'm working on stuff in the past, it's been like physical art pieces or technology, but combining the two has been really, really fun, and I'm so excited to do more.
Well, Chloe, we can't wait to see what else you come with next. Can you tell us where our viewers can find you online?
So I am on Twitter as my name, at Chloe Condon, ChloeCondon. I also am on Instagram. My handle there is GitForked, GIT. If you're an engineer, that's a funny engineering pun. If you watch The Good Place, that's a Good Place pun. Different resources and stuff for folks to learn about. My blog post about the whole Mario Kart thing, if you want to see the visuals and all of the stuff that I mentioned earlier, you can just go to aka.ms/Mario Chloe. And then we have some really, really amazing 5-minute quick start tutorials. If you're just like, I've never even played with cognitive services or a face API before, and you can go to that and look at our docs at aka.ms/Nintendo Nerds.
Great, and we'll include those links in the description below.
Definitely.
And if you end up doing it and building it, definitely tweet at me and share it. I'm so excited to see what people do with it. And it's all open source, I should mention. So if you want to change it at all or update it, or maybe you want to do a Mario Party version, you can totally fork the repo and do that. I encourage it.
Oh, awesome. Well, we always encourage creativity to our viewers, to ourselves. As you mentioned, it's a great way to kind of relax, unwind, get away from the screens, get away from the grind. Chloe, we want to thank you so much for talking to us today. We really appreciate your time. We'll definitely have to set some time aside for building in the future, because I know you and Backrolls have talked about trying to rip apart some Tickle Me Elmo dolls and turn them into piranha plants.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's happening. We're going to Twitch stream it or something.
Well, if that happens, we will be sure to share the results with you here. And as always, we hope you leave this video ready to pick up a Pro Controller, a paintbrush, or a pen. I'm Mac Fraser.
I'm Backrolls, and this has been the Nintendo Nerds.